What were you doing in the year 2014? Yeah, 2014 may have only been 5 years ago, but for the Vaporwave community, things were very, very different. Vinyl records in the scene were basically non-existent, Death's Dynamic Shroud were just beginning to make their way up the Vaporwave ladder, and Dream Catalog was the go-to place artists wanted to have their albums featured on. And talking about Dream Catalog, there was one artist present on the label at the time, and for quite a while up until that point, that seemed to drop nothing but eventual fan favorites release after release. And there's no need for introduction here. Yes, the elusive Telepath, at this point an already legendary figure in the scene, was undoubtedly taking over the Vaporwave community. Unsurprisingly, many artists wanted to work with him around this time, and one artist in particular who went by the name of Golden Livingroom, and that, folks, is where our story begins today. The story of one of Telepath's many collaboration albums and how Golden Livingroom was able to make it all happen. A story showing that sometimes all you really have to do is just ask. Get comfy, my friend, because you and I are going to be exploring the legendary Virtual Fantasy 2097 album and how it all came to be. If you want to see the topic in today's video in written form, you can head on over to Vapor95 to read my entire article about it, as well as all the other cool stuff they got going on over there. I'm going to leave a link in the description below. Also, please throw a like on this video and subscribe if you haven't so already. I would love to have you around for the next video. Back in 2014, Golden Livingroom was an active artist on Bandcamp and eventually started to get likes on his tracks from Telepath himself. He also started seeing an abundant amount of people in the Vaporwave community sharing music from Telepath and constantly creating a conversation surrounding his latest releases. GLR, at the time, had a jaded attitude towards Vaporwave and states that he did not like what it was changing into compared to the genre's original conception, and recalls being very dismissive of new projects coming about in the community. I was very dismissive of new projects and had a very closed mind about anything new, even if it was hype. I would listen to a few seconds of a track and then skip it, forming my opinion that way. I was in a terrible state and missed out on so much music when it was happening. Around the same time, GLR was approached by Dream Catalog to do Welcome Home. While working with Dream Catalog, Golden Livingroom was doing a guest mix for the label when he decided to give another try listening to this artist everyone seemed to be raving about, Telepath, and began to like what he heard. The warm quality of his tracks, all while being able to penetrate his subconscious mind, was more than inviting for GLR, and he began to develop a new appreciation for the direction Vaporwave was going in. Let me fix that real quick. Directions with an S, because Vaporwave was really starting to go everywhere at this point. Golden Livingroom decided to contact Telepath shortly after on Twitter and struck up a conversation, only to quickly cut to the chase and state that he was interested in collaborating with him. At the time, Golden Livingroom knew how many artists were working with Telepath, so he thought it would not hurt to just try and ask. He was confident their sounds would mesh, and he went for it. And as you can obviously tell, asking really paid off. After a while, the two got on the topic of dreams and other spiritual concepts and found out they had a lot in common. GLR luckily had several tracks in the works before even contacting him. Always come prepared, people. And because of that, the majority of the collaboration was ultimately done in one single evening. Virtual Fantasy 2097 was born. I was floored at how fast and effortless it was for him to add his signature ambient sound to the stems I sent. We both were working with samples at the time, so the process was very different than it is today. Something about the effortless flow of the album made it a perfect project for the duo, and to this day, Virtual Fantasy 2097 is one of GLR's favorite personal releases. The timing of contacting Telepath was right on the money, and the way the whole album unfolded was effortless. It took little to no thinking on either one of our parts. It was more of a flow of energy that took its own course. This album, in classic fashion with anything Telepath happens to touch, is a dreamy, slushy, swirly intergalactic travel through the farthest of stars. At over a 70-minute listen, Virtual Fantasy 2097 is a pretty lengthy release and features a side A primarily from Telepath and a side B from Golden Livingroom, with Telepath pretty much creating everything else after the addition of GLR's already existing tracks. The two spent several more nights chatting for hours, coming up with titles and aesthetic ideas. The artwork, layout, and design of Virtual Fantasy 2097 was all done by Telepath. He chose the cover of the album based off of the original aesthetic of Golden Livingroom at the time, a very video gamey, insides of a computer habitat per se. Telepath also thought of using the Sega Saturn spine for the album art, fitting for GLR as that was one of his favorite systems. Having the chance to speak with Golden Livingroom personally about this release, I was able to get an up-close look at his half of the album and his personal experiences making it. Golden Livingroom grew up in the dawn of the MMORPG with games like Phantasy Star Online, Final Fantasy, and many other games. He spent a notable amount of time playing these games, stating that the music from these games sank deep into the subconscious of his mind. The music was so important to him that he used to include at least one sample from Phantasy Star Online in every one of his earlier albums, all the way up to This Is Where I Am Right Now. And this love for did I just say MMM? MMORPG soundtracks, I'm sorry, obviously bled into the creation of Virtual Fantasy 2097. The track Living Water featuring Springwater is actually a collaboration with his friend Nate, who runs Midwest Collective, stating that he, Nate, has always been a silent powerhouse in the Vaporwave scene. The song I Can't See At All, It's Safe was actually written in 2012 and was artistic therapy for Golden Livingroom after he was mugged on his way home from his university's library when he was studying music theory for his master's degree. The song Halocline Systems was supposed to be a track for his friend's utopian cyberspace-themed game project trilogy. That is a mouthful right there. But they were not ready to finish the game on the time frame GLR was on, so Golden Livingroom just decided to release it into one of his own personal projects. What makes Virtual Fantasy 2097 so funny from a discussion standpoint, in my point of view, or for that point any project Telepath gets his hands on, is that you can really end up just praising each album for almost the same exact thing. How many times can we call a Telepath release an amazing dreamscape or an out-of-body experience? I think it's pretty amazing to be an artist that conjures up a struggle for anyone to really explain what is beyond these overused vaporwave terms at this point. The strange state fans find themselves in trying to discover new adjectives to properly explain the feelings one would get when listening to one of these Telepath releases. Virtual Fantasy 2097 is absolutely no different. It's a project that lifts you from your physical body and soars you through these starry depths light years away from any of us. Any fan of ambience and slushwave should definitely check this album out if you have not already. Prepare to take a flight in a virtual space-like world with the enormity of 1,000 galaxies. And remember, like I said earlier, this album proves that if you want something, anything, all you really have to do is just ask. The Vaporwave community is a super friendly place, and artists are always appreciative of anything you have to say when it comes to their music. Whether you want to pitch the idea of working with someone, provide constructive criticism to their latest release, or just simply drop by to say hello and, say how much you like their latest stuff, just asking a question may lead to a world of endless possibilities. Golden Livingroom will be featured in my upcoming musical collaboration project titled Combo Champ. I've decided to take 20 beloved artists from the Vaporwave scene and randomly pair them with one another, and each of them have to create a track together for this soon-to-be unforgettable album releasing on my channel New Year's Day 2020. I and many others are excited to see where Golden Livingroom goes with his contribution to the project. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my channel to stay up to date with Combo Champ and any other video or project I got in the works. And until next time, much love, your boy, Pad Chennington.